This program is the 415ers, brought to you by the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network, 195.7 The Game. You can follow Marc on social at Marc Grandi, Marc with a C, Grandi with an I. I'm on social at eGiddings10, at 415ers across social media platforms. Download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Okay, so I do think that one of the reasons we're talking about, should the 49ers be considered Super Bowl favorites? I believe they should not. Marc believes they should be the favorites in the NFC, but really the driving force behind this question, and the reason why I think Vegas even has them above Philly in the NFC is because of how damn good the offense has looked for the 49ers. And so maybe if you feel like the previous question was a bit unfair, a bit, you know, juiced, so to speak, if we're talking betting terms. This question, I do believe, is one that is a little more down the middle, which is, for those of you listening, do the 49ers have the best offense remaining in the NFL playoffs? At the end of Super Wildcard Weekend, they scored the most total points of any team that played, 41. It was a season high. Brock Purdy scored a total of 4 touchdowns. The team looked like it could not be stopped in the second half, rattling off 25 unanswered points against Seattle. And now they face a Dallas defense that, albeit much better, still, I'm not sure is going to be able to slow down this 49ers defense, because really no one has since Brock Purdy has taken over as the full-time starter. So, Marc, to that question of the 49ers having or not having the best offense remaining in the NFL playoffs, you say what?
I think they do. This is a difficult question because there is sort of I don't know what the right word is, an energy, an uneasiness when you're going against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. He's just special. And when you factor that in, maybe you're more scared of Kansas City's offense as a unit because of just the unknown of what Patrick Mahomes might, grab out of his bag and what trick he might play on you, because he's just that special. But when you consider the offense as a whole, Evan, I think the 49ers are the most dominant, the most versatile, the most tough to game plan for. And they put a defense in knots unlike any other team still alive, and any other team in the entire league for that matter. I think this 49er offense is just hell to play against. There was a play, against the Seattle Seahawks where Deebo Samuel lined up in the backfield on the right hip of Brock Purdy, and this was down near the end zone, and they had Christian McCaffrey in the left slot. They brought McCaffrey across in motion, and you can just see the whole defense. Oh my God, McCaffrey's in motion. We have to cover him. And you can see like 3 guys, including both linebackers, move with McCaffrey across the formation. Didn't even give him the ball. That was never the plan, to give McCaffrey the ball. Just clear out some space in the middle of the field, and it opened things up. And I don't know if they scored on that play, but they got really close to scoring on that play. That's just one example. This Niners offense, because of their weapons and how versatile all their weapons are, and everything they force an opponent to think about, I think they are the best offense remaining in the NFL. And what I can guarantee, they're the most difficult team to game plan for defensively left in the postseason. No other team in the entire NFL makes things more difficult on a defensive group than these 49ers.
That is true. It has been true, especially when it comes to turning over other teams. When it comes to the offense, I think that it's hard for me to call any offense better when one has Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. But
Yeah.
if Brock Purdy was to ever make a case for him being not the best overall quarterback in the playoffs, but the perfect quarterback for the right offense, I think this would be it, because he has everything around him necessary to be successful, and he has clearly unlocked everyone at the right time. And it's not all in the same game. I know we talked it was, I forget which week they were down in Mexico City, but how, everyone ate that day on offense. George Kittle had a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, like everyone ate that day when Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback. Well, everyone has not ate every single week when Brock Purdy's been the quarterback, but it's been a rotating cast of characters as far as who dominates on a given day. On the first game in the playoffs, it was Deebo Samuel, it was Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle had gotten a lot of touches the few weeks prior in the regular season. Brandon Ayuk obviously finished with 1,000 yards. He finished down the stretch very effectively. Elijah Mitchell getting back in the mix coming off of injury. You are looking at so many different players for this offense that Brock Purdy can pick and choose from, and seems to do it with an expert level that we have not seen. And it is not easy. I know we talk about how the offense is, humming because there's so many pieces. It's not easy to feed all of these mouths, and yet Brock Purdy seems to pick the right ones at the right times. As much as guys are running all over the field wide open, it is incumbent on the quarterback to hit those guys when he needs to and identify where he needs to go with the football. I have seen him do that at what seems like a near flawless rate, despite some mistakes and a couple of mishaps that have not cost the 49ers. If you're asking me if the 49ers have the best offense remaining in the playoffs, I cannot say they're better than Kansas City because Kansas City has done it the entire year. But what I can say is this offense, and we have not seen Kansas City play yet, is playing at a high level that rivals that of the Chiefs based on the way that Brock Purdy has elevated this offense in the past 7 weeks, having scored now 30 or more points in 6 of the last 7. He right now has this offense playing at a level that I believe can compete with Kansas City. So they may not be the best, but they are at least in second place if you're talking about the offense playing the best football and the quarterback right now playing the best.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think maybe if you had this conversation even last week before the wild card round, maybe you would say, well, hey, what about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills? I know they put up, 30 plus points in that game, but man, it was an ugly game for Buffalo. Josh Allen, an incredible player, but man, the way he turns over the ball, that's going to prove to be an issue at some point in the postseason. Maybe he plays the best 3 games of his life here coming up and he wins the Super Bowl. We will see, but that's certainly an issue. I'm with you. I think it's between the Niners and Kansas City at this point. Philadelphia, when they're fully healthy and rolling, they're a pretty good offense as well. But I think the Niners are a little bit more dynamic. And something that Kyle Shanahan said on his Monday conference call with the media when asked about Brock Purdy and how he's playing, Shanahan, said something along the lines of, I think Brock and I see things really similarly. And we've talked a lot about Kyle Shanahan, and we've kind of jokingly called him a genius. And in the past, why isn't your offense as good as some of the other offenses in the NFL? If you are this preeminent football mind offensively, why does your offense not look like it? And Shanahan fans, most of them would answer, well, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's the one holding them back. Jimmy Garoppolo fans or people that weren't as high on Kyle Shanahan would say, well, he's not a genius. He's not that good of an offensive play caller. But maybe simply he just didn't have a quarterback. And this is not a shot at Jimmy at all. He won so many games with the 49ers. But maybe simply he has just found a quarterback that is a better fit for his system and what he wants to do. And now we're finally seeing the Kyle Shanahan dream offense, at its full potential. And Shanahan is now living up to kind of that genius moniker that got thrown around so often for him, fairly or not. And you have to credit him, and you have to credit Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan and the front office for putting this team together. But certainly this is the best that a Niners offense has ever looked under Kyle Shanahan. And I mean, with a rookie quarterback, maybe there's room for improvement, which is scary enough to say. But I think I'm with you on the fact that this team is playing as good offensively as any other. But I think I'd go just a step further than you and say, period, they are the best offense in the NFL, at least still alive in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I can't pick a team over Kansas City, but what I will say is this offense to me is humming the way that, and I hope that this season does not end the way that the season I'm about to bring up did, but like the 2016 Atlanta Falcons looked when Kyle Shanahan was calling plays for them, because Matt Ryan, outside of that season, an MVP season, by the way, was a relatively comparable, fair, good, content sometimes above average quarterback. But that season, when he had all of his weapons clicking and when Kyle Shanahan got into a rhythm over the course of weeks and months, that offense was unstoppable up until, of course, Tom Brady in the second half took over and the Falcons collapsed. That's the type of momentum it feels like this 49ers offense has. The only difference between that team and the Falcons team is you also have a number one defense on the other side. So I do feel like there's a lot of confidence and momentum right now with this team that was not seen under whether it be a previous quarterback, a previous year, a previous set of coordinators for Kyle Shanahan, and we're going to get to one in just a moment that might be on his way out. But I do think if you want to say that this is the best that a Kyle Shanahan offense has ever looked, I cannot refute that because this team is absolutely loaded, and it feels like they are finally doing their talent justice with the amount of points they're putting up on the board.
Yeah, well said. I agree. And we were talking before, recording this episode and trying to figure out what exactly we wanted to hit on today. And I wanted to talk about this because, all the talk around this team, at least a lot of it this whole season has been, well, they have the best defense in the NFL. Nick Bosa is the defensive player of the year. But you look at the numbers recently, and not saying the defense has been bad. Obviously, they didn't have their best game against the Raiders in week 17. They had a relatively bad first half against the Seahawks to start the postseason. But you look at the numbers recently, and the offense has been, the more impressive unit. And on a team that has, the best defensive side in the entire league, and everyone basically agrees with that. Whether you think the Niners have the best offense, second best offense, third best offense, hell, even fourth or fifth best offense, you pair that with the best defense in the NFL, and you have a team that should get to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And I thought it was an interesting conversation because so much of this season has been focused on how great the defense is. But now suddenly you also have an elite offense, and it's all coming together at the right time.
It is, and that's what it's all about. I mean, every team that wins the Super Bowl every single year is playing the best football of any team, and right now the 49ers can certainly make that case. Speaking of the defense, there was some news this week that we have to at least get out to the people, make sure that they know, which is DeMeco Ryans, defensive coordinator for that number one unit in the NFL that we've been discussing, is scheduled to interview with 4 teams before Sunday's game. So the Indianapolis Colts became the 4th team this week, entering the mix for DeMeco Ryans. The Denver Broncos, Houston Texans, and Arizona Cardinals previously received permission to speak with DeMeco Ryans. I'm not sure if he's going to want any of these certain spots, although you can never, he's only 38 years old. I'm sure he's going to have another opportunity if he wants. And it would be hard pressed for someone to turn down a head coaching job that will be as highly sought after as someone like DeMeco Ryans. But it just goes to show, Mark, that I think, you honestly said it probably in week 4 or 5. I didn't come around maybe until midway through the season, but DeMeco Ryans, if he so chooses, is not going to be with this team next year.
No, he will get an offer. I think there are 5 openings right now. The 4 you mentioned that he is interviewing with: Broncos, Colts, Texans, and Cardinals. And then you can throw in the Panthers there. So they're the only opening that isn't currently scheduled to interview DeMeco Ryans. He will probably get an offer. The Texans are one to keep an eye on. He might not want to go there, but of course he played for the Texans and had some pretty successful seasons there. So he's obviously familiar with that organization and that city. Maybe, he's drawn to that just for his past. If you're looking at maybe the best situation, I don't know, the Colts.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, the Broncos have a good
elimination.
defense. If he's looking at defenses, it's the Broncos. But because they have a over the hill Russell Wilson tied up to all their money for the future, that might be tough to win in the future. The Cardinals are going to be a mess at the very least in 2023. We know the Texans, they're going to have the second overall pick this year. The Colts had a very bad year, but they might be the best option of that group of 4. But what's interesting is he's going to have 4 interviews this week, Evan, when the team is preparing for the Dallas Cowboys. This is a huge matchup that's going to take a lot of time for DeMeco Ryans. And It's not on him. It's the way that the NFL sets this thing up. They should not allow teams that are out of the postseason to interview coaches of teams that are still alive. It takes away from potential preparation time for those guys that are still in the postseason. And again, I'm not saying DeMeco Ryans is going to, I don't know, instead of prep, he's going to go on this interview, probably a Zoom or a Skype with the Colts. I'm not saying that, but your mind is elsewhere a little bit. You're interviewing with 4 teams before Sunday when you're taking on the Cowboys. It's kind of unfortunate the way that it plays out. You have a great season, you have a great candidate, your team does, and then they get pulled away mid-week while you're trying to prepare for a game to see if they might fit with some other team. So we'll see how it all works out. I'm probably making a bigger deal of it than it actually is, but it's just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, to which coordinator's not allowed to interview until after the season over, I say boo-hoo. I mean, that's just that's the rules. Like, you got to open up your head coaching position. Some teams do it quicker than others, and teams want to pounce. So whether they be official or unofficial, teams would figure out who they want as their head coach.
Maybe.
I think immediately after those vacancies become available. Also, you got 2 days rest advantage. So DeMeco Ryans, I don't see a problem with that at all. I think he's locked and loaded for Dallas, and he's just going to sneak in Houston. He's going to sneak in Arizona. He's going to sneak in those other 2 teams, and they're going to fit around his schedule. For all we know, they could be 5-minute conversations, and he says, hey, this is who I want the number 2 or number 3 or number 4 overall pick. If you don't want that, well, then I'm walking. So who knows?
All I'm going to say is, and I obviously I don't expect this to happen. I don't think it's going to, and I don't want it to happen. What if the Cowboys come out and put 31 points on the 49ers? Let's say that happens.
Then it's a good thing that he interviewed this week.
There will be talk. There will be talk about how he had 4 interviews and it took away from his preparation. I guarantee you that would happen. 100%.
That might be from one half of the 415ers, but the other half will not be having that. I can guarantee it. Because I do not believe, I mean, that's just how the world works. And if you can't multitask and you can't operate under a tight deadline, DeMeco Ryans is in the position that he is in because he can do more than interview with 4 teams in a single week, in a game week, in a week that matters. And his team's going to be ready no matter what. So
I think the other factor, and I say this completely seriously, it's unfortunate the way that it has played out in the past for African-American head coach or potential head coaches in the NFL. I mean, Eric Bieniemy of the Kansas City Chiefs, it seemed like he's deserved a head coaching job for years and hasn't gotten one. The way that the whole Brian Flores situation worked out in Miami when he was a head coach and got let go. There's a number of examples. Of course, there is the Rooney Rule, which for every head coach opening, you have to interview and consider at least one coach of color. DeMeco Ryans, of course, is an African-American man, so he is a way for teams to, oblige with the Rooney Rule. I'm not saying that that's why he's being interviewed. He's being interviewed because he is a really quality candidate. But also when there is a quality candidate like that, you can guarantee just about that he's going to be interviewed by almost every single opening because it allows teams to comply with that rule. So we'll keep an eye on how it all plays out, and we'll talk about it on the 415ers. He certainly deserves a head coaching job. And as you mentioned, I think early at the top, if he wants one, he will get an offer and he will not be the Niners DC next year. I think it's just ultimately a question of if he wants to at this point, or maybe if he wants to wait another year and wait for a better potential option.
Yeah, and ultimately, in that case, a matter of time. The Brian Flores situation is a deep dive at best, and I think that I have a few theories on Eric Bieniemy as to why he's still an offensive coordinator, but we do not have the time. Maybe we can bring it up over the summer when DeMeco Ryans inevitably gets some looks for a head coaching position. But that's all the time we have, Marc. And that is another edition of the 415ers podcast on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network 3 times a week. I know it's a bit staggered this week with a Sunday, Tuesday, and then Friday episode, but we will get back on track next week because the 49ers play the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday at 3:30 from Levi's Stadium. So we'll be coming at you shortly thereafter. But Marc, I'm looking forward to this preview episode. It's Dallas Cowboys week officially, and it's a big game for the 49ers either way.
Yep, second year in a row. They beat the Cowboys in Dallas last year. Now they get them back at home in Santa Clara. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it, Evan.
All right. That's it for the 415ers podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll talk to you next time.